I think we're good to go. We're good to go, Nigel.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone, wherever you are in the world. It's a cold grey day here today, about 2 degrees, so I hope you're doing better than us. This presentation first came out, Kim and I speaking at the study group weekend. Obviously, not a lot has been written about the QEII Interim issue at all as yet, although I know Wilf and Hugh are listening, and they are, I'll say the information is well on the way to produce a monograph when circumstances allow that, and that would be very welcome from everyone, I'm sure. It's one of the less glamorous issues, comprised of only 6 stamps. Basically, as we're aware, the King George VI died just over a month after the issue of a complete set of definitive stamps. So initially there was no requirement, no shortage of stamps or requirement for any other issues. Taking into account austerity measures in the aftermath of the war, and obviously no desire to spend money unnecessarily. So there was nothing to warrant a full QEII issue at this time. Obviously, when you look at the values that were issued, the first one to be reissued was the 6penny, and when you look at the postage rate requirements, it's no wonder that was the air letter rate, which would be one of the commonest usages, and that was followed by the 1 shilling value, which is obviously the minimum airmail letter rate. So it's there's not much to excite stamp enthusiasts in this, although Roger, I don't think Roger's with us this afternoon, but he tends to get very excited about it at the moment. There was only one printing by Waterloo and Sons of each of the 6 values. And I will say at this time there are no listed varieties, but Roger is trying very hard to find some. There are shade variations due to different types of paper used, and obviously the inking process, similar to the 1952 circular, you do get some significant shade variations, possibly down to different thicknesses and types of paper. And the inking process, that obviously has an effect, and even in the first Falkland Islands Study Group Digest way back, we had a piece in there from Arthur Ward and Malcolm joining the conversation about the shade variations on the 2penny value across the sheet. And I think I had an email from Malcolm this week. He's not able to attend, but he's just acquired another 2penny sheet, and he says rather than north to south variations in colour, it's diagonally across the sheet as well. So you may well find significant shade variations on some of the values. It's not easy to do these days, because unless you're sort of you've been collecting these a long time, it's very difficult now to acquire large blocks or even sheets like you used to, even of the 8penny and penny values. They're not easy to find, and dealers these days, if you ask for anything in blocks, they just look at you as though you're from another planet, to be honest. But having said that, it's still an interesting issue for the QEII enthusiasts. And when I first started putting the notes together from this, I was pleased to read the Crown Agent sheets correspondence that such as Wilf, Kim, Hugh, Mike Roberts have extracted from the copies of extracted from the archives in Stanley. And one of the things that I'd never appreciated till I did this bit of research for this presentation was the fact that you often wonder why there wasn't a full QEII issue until 1960, till the Birds came out. But when you look at the Crown Agent's correspondence from 1954, I'll just read you this ad hoc. It's briefly, the Secretary of State has laid down that the royal portrait is not to be changed on the current issue, where a new issue is contemplated in the near future. But if the portrait is changed on the current issue, a new issue cannot be considered for a further 6 or 7 years. So if you take that literally, it was no wonder that it took till 1960 for a full QE2 definitive issue based on this information. So these sheets do provide a lot of good information for us now that we've had members of the study group visiting the islands and the archives. Slide 2, please, Kim.
Oh. Working out why it's, is that it?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
So just going on from that, if you see there on the right-hand side of the slide, there's a typical example of the Crown Agent's inspection branch information, and what we glean from this is sheet numbers and numbers supplied to the islands, etc., which are very interesting when you're looking at the various issues to the colony. So we've when you look at these, the only one we haven't got, and Hugh or Will might be able to comment at the end, I've never seen one for the 6penny value. We have corresponded about this in the past, but I haven't seen a Crown Agent sheet from the archives for the 6penny value giving the information as you see here, but hopefully that will be to hand somewhere. So, like I say, we've only 6 values to talk about. Not many varieties of listed varieties, and the sort of things that Roger's finding under his giant microscope at the moment, I don't know whether any of them will ever come to appear in the catalogue, or Stefan's catalogue might be about 2 inches thick by the time he's got to it. But they do exist on the half-p value, on the 1p value. I have the odd one that just kept out of interest over the years. Small breaks in frame lines and small horizontal lines through the letters in the Falkland Islands, but they don't seem to be constant at all, and so it's debatable whether they'll ever acquire catalogue status. So we'll just go through them one by one. I've just shown, for the sake of completeness, a block of each of the values with the colonial sheet numbers. So if we could move on, Kim, please. There we have the 2penny, 6penny and 9penny. The 9penny is interesting because when you look at the postage rates at the time, the 9p value was basically the basic inland parcel rate. So to find one of those commercially used on a parcel label, put it this way, I'm still trying. I don't know whether Wilf or Hugh's got one, but that's one of the missing things from my collection, is an inland parcel label or piece with a 9penny value on it. Next slide, please, Kim. The final value, of course, the shilling, which was the airmail rate. That was one of the most common usages at the time. So if we can move on, my main interest in this area, it started with the postal history of the time, and it's you wouldn't think at first, that there could be that much to collect, but I managed to keep it going because there's some very interesting things that happened in the sort of period from 1954 to 60, which I'll come on to as we go through. The first item there is the airlet usage, 6p to the Housewife's Choice BBC. And this always come from West Falkland, and it always sticks in my memory because it was one of the first ever items that I bought from there was a large postal history collector in more ways than one. If you remember David Birtwell, passed away a few years ago, but it was a good source of material for us, I'll say northerners, and this was one of the first ever things I got from him back in the day. Next slide, please, Kim. Now, the first looking, it's just another two 6p rate air letters, but the significant thing about these is you get drawn into looking down side streets, if you like, when you're collecting such a short issue. But the dates on these and one of the contents of the letter tie in with the Canso aircraft from the Hunting Aero Survey expedition returning back to Canada at the end of each season. So you get the first one on the left is from 1956. The aircraft is cancelled 27th of March 56, and it left on the 29th for Montevideo, and the islanders, when you've only one normal mailing per month via the sea mail system, they took advantage, and there was some mail carried out to Montevideo on the Canso flight. And similarly, at the end of the second season, the right-hand air letter form, it's cancelled 15th of March 57, and that ties in with the Canso flight at the end of the second season when the aircraft were returning to Canada via Montevideo. So that's another interesting thing to look for if you've got those dates at the end of March, first season, middle of March, second season. Next slide, please. Another interesting sideline to collect in that period is the air letters that were sent via radio from the base from the dependencies bases into Stanley, Met Office and radio station, and they were typed out by the station and posted off. And each of the members at the bases, they had an account, and I think they were charged one penny per word for the service, and they paid their accounts at the end of their period in the dependencies. So that's another thing to look for, one that no doubt will have been doing the same over the years, to try and get air letters from all the different bases. The messages are relayed by radio into Stanley and then typed up and posted off. Next slide, please. Finally, this one always tickled my sort of sense of humour, if you like. Another radio one from a meteorologist at Admiralty Bay Base G, and the comment at the bottom right is saying in the letter that's typed in to a member of his family, just had a bath in Dettel after feeding seal meat to the huskies. So it sort of brings up an interesting thing in your mind, what state he must have been in. Next slide, please. So then, still attached to the Hunting Aero Survey, I'm going on usage of the 1 shilling value, which appeared in July 1955. Here we have one on a registered envelope, commercially used. It's addressed to the wife of the pilot of one of the helicopters on the Dependencies Aerial Survey. And the other thing that it brings into the conversation at this stage, obviously there was no QE2 postal stationery until the end of the 1950s. So you do get late usage of the first George VI QE2 postal station registered envelopes, etc. So they're not easy to find commercially used, but they still appear in this sort of period between 1954 and 1960. Next slide, please. There again, shilling value on mail. The left-hand cover from a correspondence to someone in a nurse's home at the Middlesex Hospital, and it has the hunting survey label correctly used, not cancelled. They weren't supposed to cancel these labels, although you do find them. So it's just a matter of finding different things. There's not a lot of, like I said, different values to look for, but to find them on different types of mail. And then the right-hand cover just a double rate airmail showing the 6 million shilling values together. So next slide, Kim, please. Another one this time addressed to the Dean family, who are the owners of the farming interest on Pebble Island. And this shows usage of the George VI 9p values as well as the QE2, the 6p. There again, that's another thing. You do get lovely combination covers in this period with the George VI and the QE2 values mixed to give very attractive covers. All the stamps themselves, they weren't particularly liked at the time by collectors, because basically apart from the 2.5p George VI value, they were all single colours, and after the excesses of the George VI issues in the 30s and 40s, they tended to be considered a bit drab, but they are quite attractive stamps in their own right. So I think next cover slide, Kim, please. Interesting one again, a massive 6p and shilling values, this time to Denmark from Burton's on Carcass Island. It's nice to get things above the basic rate. So that's another thing that I've tended to look for is higher rate mails with a combination of stamps on. Next slide, Kim, please. There again, 5 1 shilling values on cover to the Falkland Islands Company. Still bearing in mind at this time, most of the higher value airmail stuff was commercial company mail, if you like, because the islanders had no requirement to spend all that money on mail when they were still waiting a month between mails via the mailboat. So you don't find much higher rate mail. I've included the cover on the left simply because it's a PSNC envelope, and it ties in with the last time that Reina del Pacifico visited the islands, what was to be her last visit. So I just thought it was, although it's a basic shilling rate, it's a nice usage on the PSNC envelope. Next slide, please. Just for to keep Kim interested for a while, a couple of commercial items from Fox Bay with the 6 million shilling values used again, correctly used. I think the Exton Smith, wife of the former doctor at Fox Bay, if I remember rightly. And Oxendale's correspondence is well known, but you don't get many double rate items. Next slide, please. Another one from Fox Bay. This well-known correspondence. Hubert Wilson, booksellers, news agents. Here again, a multiple rate, which are not common, but well worth looking for. Next, Kim. This is an interesting one. One of my more recent acquisitions in the study group auction not too long ago. I'm very pleased to get it. It's addressed to the wife of the former colonial postmaster, and you don't get much registered commercial mail from this period, so it was nice to pick this one up. And again, a multiple rate using the shilling and the Georgia VI threatening value to pay the registration fee. Next slide, Kim, please. This time, a 4 shilling rate on a OHMS cover to USA opened officially secured, found damage in the post, which is another nice usage. And I always like to pick a few OHMS envelopes up for my collection if possible. Bearing in mind, if they didn't have the official mark, registration mark, official paid mark, I should say, registered with the UPU, that to the required postage stamps. So that's a nice usage with 4 1 shillings on. And I think finally, Kim, the next one, a nice one to textile mill in Leeds with 6 shilling values on. So that's the most I've got to so far, I think, on going up in 1 shilling rates. I've got from 1 shilling up to 6 shillings. So I hope to be able to keep that going somehow in the future. But you don't see much of this sort of thing around anymore in dealers' stocks. Thanks, Kim. Next one. Nice usage of the shilling on an airmail postcard here. I just included this one because it talks about one of the cameramen that was involved in making the Peter Scott, the Scott in the Antarctic film. Not Peter Scott, Captain Scott, making the film, and it's related to one of the cameramen that was on the filming. And on the right there, just another one to the BBC in London, which was posted, should have been 2.5p obviously, but it was posted with just a 1p stamp on, which is normally the inland letter rate at the time. And it's got the Falklands to pay on, and with threatens there for threatens to pay, that's double the underpaid postage. At this time, the only thing, normally at this time, you had a small green label attached by the post office, normally by a pin. They were just pinned to the corner of the envelope. The green label is absent, but at least we've got the London cancellation and the to pay in green. Next slide, please. Now this is another of my sidelines in this issue. Short story, or it could be a long story. It's addressed to Mr. Arthur Ward, who was a school teacher at Darwin School for about 3 years in the 1950s. And I've always looked out for Arthur Ward mail because it was Arthur who introduced me to the study group at the turn of the 1970s when he did a bit of dealing when he came back from the Falklands, and he advertised in a little stamp collecting magazine, and I just by chance asked him for some Falklands, And he asked me if I wanted the address of this gentleman who was starting the study circle, Mr. Barton. So the rest is history, as they say. 50 years later, I'm still chasing them, and that's a nice one to have. And it shows you sort of the mixed franking with the tuppenny value in, which appeared in 1956. Now you may ask why that there was a requirement for that, but when you look, if you go on to the next slide, Kim, please. At the time, the inland rate for printing matter for such as magazines, etc., was tubs. And there's a magazine wrapper there addressed to Smith Brothers at Johnson's Harbour. A couple of these appeared via Malcolm Barton in the study group auction many years ago, so it was interesting or nice to pick something up. I've never seen apart from that couple that emerged at that time, I've never seen another wrapper since correctly used with a tuppenny stamp. And also at the time it was the foreign printed matter rate, so that the one at the cover on the right is given the date would probably be contained a Christmas card posted unsealed. So that's another use for the tuppenny. Next slide, please, Kim. Also in the period, got second-class airmail. You had again nice mixed frankings. Second-class airmail appeared marked in manuscript quite a few times through the 1950s. We didn't get the second-class cashiers till a while later. So you got second-class airmail things to look out for. The one on the left is from Government House, and the one on the right is a postcard sent at the basic 6p second-class airmail rate. The other one being the 15-gram rate. Thanks, Kim. Next slide, please. And finally, something else to look out for, which I've tended to do. The tuppenny was required on receipts from after the stamp duty ordinance in 1958. Duty of 2p had to be paid on each receipt on any bill amounting above £2 to acknowledge payment. Now, the thing that's interesting from a collector's point of view is to try and collect as many different bill heads, if you like, with the stamp receipts on them. You can only do this in this period because by 1961 the ordinance had been stopped. So you've got a period from 1948 to 1961 where you can collect all the different company letterheads and the receipts. So that's another avenue to pursue for everybody now. I think you'll all be collecting the same things as me by the time I've done. So next slide, please, Kim. Then we go on to the half p value. The half p was one of three values that appeared in September 1957. Obviously, it was a common usage for printed matter, both inland, internally and abroad to the Empire, UK and the Empire. So here we have one with a containing the Falkland Independence's Christmas cards. Now that's another collecting habit you may acquire, because these cards seem to be issued from the mid-1950s onwards, and each season had a different black and white photograph inside them. The cards look the same from the front, as you can see there, but inside they had a different photograph each season from different bases. So that's another thing to look out for and collect in this period, although you might not think there's much stamp-wise. Next slide, Kim, please. Another usage of the half P value there on a radio ham postcard acknowledging a call, and it was forwarded by the radio club in Uruguay. So it was used to Uruguay and forwarded from there. Next slide, Kim, please. Finally, on the halfpenny single usage, internal printed matter mail, the one on the left, obviously nicely there to the top, December 58, obviously a Christmas card. And on the bottom right, a window, a bill envelope, again franked at the printed matter rate, internal printed matter rate. Next, please. Nice mixed franking here of rolls like this one as well from the contents, commercially to a firm in Dundee. And the writer is asking for some long-handled underpants to be sent out. So I don't know what long-handled meant, but there you go. But it's a nice airler to come what may with mixed franking to make up the 6p rate. Next slide, Kim, please. Then just again, mixed frankings of the each of the values at the time. The 1p came out in September 57 as well. And these are just correct rates, surface mail rates. Again, a couple there to members of the Wart family, and one to the States with a 5p halfpenny rate on, which is not common because you've only got a short period. The rate didn't change to 5.5p until 1959, so you've not got much scope in this period to get that rate on commercial mail. Next slide, please. Again, the use of the Georgia 6 stationery again with the half-p and 1p values making up the total rate, tuppence halfpenny postage and threepence registration, 5p halfpenny in total. Thanks, Kim. Yet another sideline of mine in this period. I don't think Stefan's on today, but the Swedish did invade the Falklands before Stefan got there. In the mid to late 1950s, the cruise liners, the Swedish American line and also the Holland American line started doing cruises down South America, some of which called in the islands. So another thing that I've tried to collect over the years are postcards or anything to do with the Swedish American line and the Holland American line. You get nice envelopes sometimes with the crest on the back or something. But I know Stefan will not be listening, but in his time with his auctions, he did seem to acquire cards from to Sweden as well from this period. So I've always been looking out for those. Here again, that's the tuppeny and penny values. That's the 3p postcard rate at the time, done in the 1950s from 1953 onwards. So that's another thing to look for. Thanks, Kim. And yeah, again, three 1p values now on a postcard, radio ham postcard. That's another thing to look out for. There's still a lot of activity with the amateur radio operators, and you do get these cards quite frequently on eBay, but you don't get many that are sent through the post. They must have been enclosed. So at least this one's got the stamps on the card. Thank you, Kim. Finally, on this one, you've got the penny value on internal mail. A nice example there to Arthur Ward at Darwin School with a sheet number on it, and a penny value to Port Louis, that's to collect different destinations within the islands is always another thing to try and achieve. Thanks, Kim. Mixed frankings again involving the penny value, along with a 9p airmail to Chile with a to pay marking on for some reason, which I've never really fathomed out, and also a nice one to England with the George the first set George VI stamp and the 2 pennies making the tuppence halfpenny rate to the UK. Thanks, Kim. Right, we've got the 9p. Like I said, I've never managed to find it on a parcel label, as I would very much like to do it, used in the islands, but we've got one here correctly used, making up a registered airmail rate to Denmark, triple rate registered airmail. And the one on the bottom right, again to Arthur Ward at Darwin School, it's the only one I've seen of this correct rate internal registered one in the interims period. So that was a nice one to find a few years ago. Thanks, Kim. Again, the 9p used on a correct rate airmail, this time from the Falkland Islands shipping company manager in Stanley to his mother and father back in the UK. Seemed to be quite a correspondence that survived from this gentleman, fortunately. And the one on the right, which I mentioned earlier, 5p rate to the States, which was applicable up to 1959. As you can see here, it's on a quite attractive Swedish American Lines envelope, obviously someone on a cruise. Thanks, Kim. The next one, penny postcard rate to the UK, with a nice message on there, and that was addressed to T.G. Owen, who had been out, he was out in South Orkneys and South Georgia at the late 40s, early 50s. And this was one to him, so proving he was still around in the UK up 1957. And then just a nice 3p surface mail rate to the States on a Les Hardy envelope. B, E, M and JP apparently it got awarded by then. So thanks, Kim. Nice to find multiple registered surface mail rate item addressed to Argyle Etkin, but interestingly from the Falkland Islands company, which is a nice multiple rate, a larger item, but to make the weight it would have to be quite a large envelope. Next, Kim. Mixed franking registered item addressed to Priestley, who was a geologist originally on Shackleton's and Scott's expeditions, and again he worked again during the Trans-Antarctic expedition period. So nice to get a registered mail item to him, or HMS. Thanks, Kim. Insufficiently paid for transmission by air cachet on a cover to the UK, along with just a nice mixed franking, all attractive, after Carl Lohmann emigrated from the islands in 53 to New Zealand. And you do get quite a bit of correspondence in the 50s addressed to Carl and his wife in New Zealand. I think he worked for the Forest Commission in his early days out there. So nice items to look out for with the mixed frankings. Next, Kim, please. And finally, this one up for debate. I wanted to put to include this one because I've always wondered what the significance of the certificate of posting was, because the registration at the time was threepence, tuppence halfpenny per ounce postage, and the threepence registration fee. But the certificate of posting has a printed registration fee 6p. And strangely enough, it had a 6p stamp applied to the envelope rather than a 3p to cover the registration. Now it's very similar to, well, it's the same type of certificate that was used in the UK. It's got the printed fee of 6p, and obviously it's been filled in at the post office. It's not Arthur Ward's writing, isn't that? And it's all dated up with the correct registered number, and it's at 6p paid instead of 3p. So just a quirky one to finish with. I think that's the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, I'll try and answer them. Thanks, Kim.
Right. Oh, yeah, I'll stop the share. I'll try and work out how to stop the recording.